All right. So let's get our guest in here today. Let's try this. Okay. It's already done. We're just waiting for our guest to join. There we go. See if this works. Nope. All right, let's try this a different way. Never works right the first time. Let's send an invite, see if that works. Maybe. Sorry, guys. This is always a pain in the butt. Set an invite, so we'll see if they can get on with the invite. Oh, oh, okay. Let's try the request. Maybe. Did the request work? Unable. Well, shit. Don't know what's going on. Oh, there we go. That worked. Okay. Oh, right. How are you, man?
Good, man.
Even though I just saw you like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. You get 2 hours of fun with me.
Yes. Dude, it's the best part of my day so far.
It's fine.
Everything's
good, man.
Yeah, we had some people jumping in here, so we'll go ahead and get things going. Our topic today is burnout. So navigating burnout from protocols and plans and kind of some of the restrictedness and stringent parameters that we follow on a regular basis. So kind of how do we as coaches help people navigate that? How can you guys as clients and athletes or general population fitness enthusiasts kind of navigate those things? Because it's really no surprise that sustainability is probably the biggest issue in really any of our anyone's goals long term. I know very few people that have probably sustained consistently for a year, let alone 5 years or 10 years or beyond that point. So we're going to kind of talk about that today. So I have a couple maybe one or two things that I want to touch on initially. But what would you say personally? Do you think are kind of like your one or two biggest issues running into burnout with any type of protocol?
It's usually
Like
going to
factors,
be
your biggest factors, I should say.
like biggest things that are making them burn out, not wanting to do it anymore. Is that?
Yeah, biggest factors, variables, right?
I mean, I would say it's normally these GI cases more than anything. Just because they're having to live majority of the time such a rigid and restrictive lifestyle. They're having to take all these supplements. For some, not everyone. But I would say it's usually like the gut cases or functional cases. That's usually what I see the most of. At the same time, I also see it with a lot of fat loss clients. They might have a crap ton of weight to lose. And with them, they might get burnt out with the process. Like, wow, I have to constantly eat this. I'm constantly starving or having to do cardio. That's kind of the two ways I'm seeing it. But it's usually these functional clients, whether it be a current client or we talked about like an inquiry client. That's how it was with them. They bounced around numerous coaches, and my response to them was, no, you don't need a protocol right now. We need to work on stuff first.
Right. So the theme there is that the more restricted something is, obviously the more susceptible you're going to be to burnout. And that's why prepping for a show is a temporary thing. It's like you're not living in that same state all the time. And it's the same with really any type of case. I think the difference in functional health a lot of the time is that contest prep is temporary and then you have an off season or whatever, but a lot of people are not having success in their protocols, so they're going from coach to coach. So essentially what's happening is they're doing these really restrictive, intensive protocols over and over and over again, and obviously that's going to leads to a lot of things. It leads to just general burnout, but it also like puts a really bad taste in your mouth in terms of like trusting coaches and wanting to like pay someone to do anything for you, wanting to change anything. Because a lot of the time, if you go to 3 coaches and they all have you do something similar, and then you get to that 4th person that perhaps having you do something that's quite a bit different, like you said, maybe not having them do a protocol, revisiting some other areas, that's a very foreign thing to them. So now they have to essentially kind of like relearn their whole way of thinking, right? So that's difficult. So I have a couple of things. I totally agree with you in terms of like types of clients and cases. I think those are probably the biggest ones for sure. Now, I'm going to break mine down even a little bit simpler in terms of why I think people kind of burn out. And I think there's a couple main reasons. One is they have unrealistic expectations.
Right.
That's one. And that could be for a few reasons. One, that's their own expectations that they form by like looking at Instagram or God knows what else. Like it could be anything. Or they hired somebody that's just not being honest and fair with them, and is just not educating them and being upfront with them because they wanted to take their money. That's another one. And then 2 is it kind of the same similar thing, is that the goals, like they're not cyclical in their goals in terms of like having periods where the goal isn't always extreme, So like going into, it's like right after your contest, you are bombarding yourself with tons of extra PEDs and doing all this other shit. Like eventually there's no period of homeostasis in here anywhere.
Right.
You're gonna have, if not physical burnout, you're definitely gonna have psychological burnout at some point, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are probably the biggest ones. So let's talk about things that we can do as coaches to help people kind of navigate these cases, and then I think we should talk about how we as coaches can kind of prevent it. So what are some initial maybe conversations or things that you're having to do with your clients?
So the biggest thing is setting like timelines for their goals. Or like, let's say someone wants to lose 100 pounds. I'm going to set little goals throughout, like just because a lot of people are so like farsighted. They're not thinking about short increments. Like they might lose, let's say they lose 20 pounds in like 3 months or 4 months or whatever. They're still thinking, oh, I still have 80 more pounds to go, blah, blah. So that's the first thing, is we're trying to set like little goals throughout, set realistic expectations in terms of timeline is another thing. I do think the the amount of time that you say, hey, we're going to allocate this amount of time towards this part of your goal, I do think that helps, just so people have some sort of expectation, some sort of like time restrictive expectation or time sensitive phase per se. I do think that works. That's what I do. The same thing with any functional cases, like a gut protocol. I do everything in phases, and I always tell everybody this is like a tentative timeline, being that you follow it. If you don't follow it, it's a little bit different. But they're always in the know, being like, cool, if I did everything and things work out as should, this is about the timeline of what it would take to maybe reach there. And I might set up little breaks throughout. So I do think setting up a little bit different timelines for people to work towards is a big thing. I think the other thing is like we mentioned, like expectations. Some guys might come to us and be like, hey, I want to be an IFBB pro. And they're just now starting out, or they may have been working out for 2 years. Sorry, that's probably not going to happen. But what we can say is be like, cool, how about that be your long-term goal over the next, I mean, shit, man, you've been doing it 17 since you were 17, over 10 years.
18, I don't know, 18 years old, maybe
Yeah,
17, something like
by the
that.
time I had stopped, I'd been doing it almost 10 years. And I was still nowhere close to turning a pro. And I was taking God amount of gear. So like I do think with them, maybe we set little goals. Cool, maybe your first time competitor. Cool, let's make the goal to maybe do a show in 2 years. Cool, that's your first little thing. Maybe throughout, maybe we're gonna run these phases of like gaining muscle, whatever, losing body fat, blah blah. So I do think setting like little goals throughout, I think, is the biggest thing I've found to work for most people. The other thing is find ways, how can we make this sustainable? Does that a matter of we maybe set it up, maybe one time a week you're kind of off plan, or just set stuff where they're kind of living some normalcy, and maybe throw in some things where they can enjoy life as well. And that could be anything. It could be doing things that's not training related, maybe for activity. So maybe instead of getting on the treadmill and be like, hey, you like you do motocross. That's a hell of a workout. I have clients that do that. I might say, hey, instead of doing your cardio, you like motocross in the summer, or you like kayaking or whatever.
Sure.
Cool, maybe that's your cardio for that weekend or whatever. So I do think stuff like that is how I found to do it. But I also think clear, concise communication from the get-go is needed. If you don't have that, you're just taking their money and someone plops to you and says, hey, here's my bloods, here's my stool test. Cool, you have whatever issue. Awesome. Here's your protocol. They might not even be ready for that in the first place. So like I do think the communication aspect is another place where at least where I start with communication, awesome, timelines, great, and then we see, cool, how can we make this sustainable? It's sustainable for you. Maybe we follow this 80% of the time, 85% of the time. The best like example I give is you have person A and person B. Person A is going to do everything you tell them, and in 2 years they're going to get to their goal. But at 2 years they're burnt out. They've lost every relationship. They have zero friends, family, husband, wife, whatever. They fall backwards. They're worse than they ever were in their life. Cool. They're never going to be back. We'll never hear from them. Person B, maybe they follow 80% of the time. Maybe they get to that same place in 5 years or 6 years. But guess what? After that 6 years, they're going to still be cranking and still working towards their goals and moving forward. And they're going to maintain that and sustain that progress for years to come. So that's that exact person A, person B, I give that example to every single person that jumps on a call with me. That's got to be the biggest thing that they understand, is that you can be 100%. I did that for years, and guess what? At the end of it, I was burnt the hell out, and now I'm nowhere close to that most of the time. And getting back on the horse and trying to do it all over again. So like that's kind of where I start.
Yeah, I think those are great suggestions. So, timeline, like everyone loves, most people like timelines. There's a lot of things, like one of the things I do is that I will when I speak to clients, I try to forecast stuff a little bit, even if it's not, hey, this will be 3 weeks, this will be 8 weeks, this will be 12 weeks. It's so much like once we can accomplish this, here's how I see things moving. Here's kind of our like tentative sequence of events. right? And of course, we can't predict everything. There's roadblocks in there. There's that stuff happens, but we can at least give them some idea of the sequence of events that we intend to have, and that's really helpful. It keeps because a complaint that I've heard from clients about past coaching experiences a lot is they're kept in the dark too much. They don't really have explanation, so on and so forth. I'm not talking about like explaining the like the mode of action of something. I'm talking about explaining just the thought process to some degree,
Yep.
right? So there's that, and then also like I like to know, and this isn't always required. It really just depends on where the client's at. But sometimes like it's important to know, how do they come up with this goal? Like why is this your goal? So because sometimes the goals that they have maybe aren't the goals that they should have or that they need, right? Like they could have the goal of, like you said, becoming an IFBB pro, or maybe their goal is to lose 50 pounds. Like, I don't know, it could be anything, but they've gotten these goals or come up with these goals from a place that is not really aligned with where they're currently at, right? Maybe it's they saw something online or a friend or it could be anything,
It
right?
could be that, or it could be, it can come from a place of hurt too. They could have
Pain.
been bullied
Yep.
like crazy, or
Yep.
maybe they're fat their whole life and was tired of hearing that. Where that's cool, we can still work towards that. But I do think at that time it's like, cool, let's work towards that. But we also need to find like a healthy goal. It's not healthy to be like, oh, I don't want to be fat because I was always picked on, but you're willing to do whatever for it. But are you actually going to be happy when you get to there? Because
Right. What is
most
the
likely you're still going to think, oh, I'm still small or I'm still fat, no matter how you are. So maybe we work towards that. And then maybe I say, hey, we need to work on this inner stuff, this inner mental work as well at the same time. And maybe we figure out goals that actually would make you happy in
yeah.
the first place. Because losing 50 pounds or being a bodybuilding is the best example. You will never be happy. I don't care what anyone says, because you're always going to be like, oh, I can get 1% better. I can gain one more pound of muscle. I can gain one more quarter of an inch on my biceps or quads or whatever. You're never going to be happy. So I don't view that ever as a healthy goal, because you're always going to be trying to get better. There's no way. That's the beauty of bodybuilding, is you can always get better. You can always get leaner. You can always get bigger. Obviously, health and genetics stop that, but there are ways to work around that as well. But I do agree with you. Maybe finding goals that would maybe make the person happy in the first place, or understand, cool, what is it that makes you tick?
Yep. And so that actually goes to the second thing I was going to mention, which is essentially, where do they want to be in a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, like whatever timeline. I think, and it depends on their age and what their goal is, but that's a question to pose occasionally, like why do you have this goal, and secondly, where do you want to be later? And here's an example that I used this on a live the other day. Was I want to lose 15 pounds for my wedding. Like, okay. So actually what you're telling me is that body you want for your wedding is the body that you want all the time. I don't think you just want to lose 15 pounds for your wedding and then go back to the same body that you're in now. So I'd love to help you look better for your wedding, for sure. I'm on board as long as it's a feasible goal. But also, when I'm kind of making my plan of attack, I would like to also account for the fact that we can sustain those results after the wedding, or maybe we only lose 10 or 12 pounds before the wedding, and we have to kind of extend our goal out a little bit longer, you know? So I think that when people make a goal, especially when it's a cosmetic goal, I would assume that most of the time, outside of like contest prep, the end of contest prep, they probably don't want to lose that progress.
Correct.
Right? of course, you're going to have ebbs and flows over time. Like there's going to be periods where you get a little softer, get a little leaner. But we're not one to lose 100% of our progress all, over and over again. So that's another thing I'm asking is where do you really want to be years from now? It's like I'm really antsy to get into that SIBO protocol. Okay, cool, but if we screw this up and we do it prematurely, we're going to do another SIBO protocol in 6 months from now, and you've already done that 3 times before. I'm like, do you really want to keep doing that?
Yeah.
And I would say the answer is probably no, obviously. So I love those answers. I think those are great. And there's another thing I wanted to talk on and get your opinion on too, and that is and another issue with burnout that I see is that people have a certain connotation to a goal. And what I mean by that is it's almost as if they view certain things as a punishment or view them negatively, right? So I have to listen, I don't like doing tons of cardio, really. I'm just being completely honest with you.
Yeah.
There's certain aspects of changing my body or even health related stuff that I don't particularly enjoy doing. However, it's purpose driven, so I don't put a negative connotation on those things, because the more of a negative connotation or viewing something as a punishment, then you're going to create burnout, because every time you do said task, it is going to just drive you further and further and further away mentally from where you need to be. So, you can't just expect to absolutely hate something and then continue to do it forever. It's not going to work. Probably not going to work.
Yeah. I agree. It's kind of like, best example you'd have with let's say it's like bodybuilders, they might not want to go through the health stuff. And the reason why we're doing it is so you can keep doing bodybuilding years to come. That's again where we're all short-sighted with everything. It's kind of like some people will come to you like, oh, I've got to get in this protocol ASAP. Well, why? Oh, so I can get back to doing this. Cool, we can do it, but you're going to be back in it in the first place. And you're viewing it as a punishment. Oh, I just want to lose body fat, but you're making me do this protocol. Well, have you ever thought about that? For some, realistically, some have such bad bloat, it's not body fat in the first place. Have you ever thought that if we went through this, maybe you would not look so fat? You ever thought about that if we took the time to work on this and nail these habits and do X, Y, Z, that you would get back to enjoying your life and not having to be restrictive? So you're viewing something as a punishment versus the whole purpose that you mentioned. So I would agree it's the same token with everyone. When you're chasing a goal, none of it's not always going to be positive and fun. I don't think it ever is going to be. There's going to be times where you have to do stuff. Even if it's anything in life. Like if you want to be a big time business executive, guess what? You're going to be the grunt. You're going to have to work your ass off.
You're going to be someone's freaking mule for a while, probably.
You're going to be the jockstrap for the longest period of time, and eventually you're going to get it there. You're going to view it as punishment, or you're going to view it as cool. I'm doing stepping stones to get where I want to be.
Yep.
And view
necessary stuff.
And instead of viewing everything so negative, treat your goal as this big house you're trying to build. And every day you have the opportunity to be you're a bricklayer. You have that day the opportunity to lay a perfect brick to then build that house and reach your goal. Yep. Is it punishment that you're doing all these things to get there? No, it's just necessity. It's what you got to do. Like, unfortunately, we do stuff that you're going to have to do, but it's also our goal is cool. What are your non-negotiables that maybe you want to do what are the non-negotiables we have that you need to do? And what are the non-negotiables of things that you want to do that we think you shouldn't do? Let's meet in the middle. That's another thing I take into account there.
Yep. And here's where we can kind of segue into kind of like working on or navigating the burnout once it's there. It's like, so for example, today I trained and I really was not in a good mood when I got there. So I'm like, I don't want to be here. I'm by myself out here. It's humid as shit. I'm hot. I'm sweating, and I'm really uncomfortable. And I've got these lifts that are going to be really hard. Like my first lift was like T-bar, was like a T-bar row. And I'm like, God, it's going to suck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, but I thought about it and I thought, hey, for one, weights, treadmills, things like these are inanimate objects, for one. They've never done anything to me. So that's one thing. It's like saying, it's like you have issues that you caused yourself and you say like, well, bodybuilding's, the worst thing ever. I'm like, nah, I mean, you did it. It's, you made the choice and you did it. Right. So you could say that about anything. Now that's different. That is different. Like basically in that case, I just need to man up. I just need to do what I need to do. And I have to do that all the time. I have to do that with work. I have to do that with training. I have to do that on those days, all these like countless hours where I'm working 14 hours and 16 hours, like all these ridiculous days. It's just something that I have to do a lot of times. Now, the issues that we run into is we as coaches or athletes or general population lifestyle folks, we have to be able to decide what things do we need to just kind of man up and do, and when do we have an issue where we need to kind of change our approach entirely to navigate the burnout. And that's where we come in as coaches, because a lot of the time, like you had made the example and I made the example of the functional health case that's had 3 coaches and they've done all these protocols. We literally talked about one today that had inquired with you, and that's such a common thing, right? So how do we take that person who clearly has a burnout issue and a trust issue and kind of get them on the right track? And there's some initial steps that we have to revisit. We have to revisit all the things that you talked about, like why do we have the goals? What do they mean to us? Where are they going to get us? Sustainable happiness, blah, 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 blah. But also our connotation towards it, and maybe our approach is such that we're kind of like putting ourselves into too much of a box here, because something that I've even done, and this isn't just functional, this is even like bodybuilders, so I work with a lot of competitors too, is sometimes in the off, maybe prep is not the time to kind of learn this skill, but maybe in the off season we can kind of learn this skill is exploring other things that we like, exploring other hobbies, other interests, even if it's just for short periods of time, and adding some of those non-negotiable things into their routine in order to give some temporary bouts of happiness. And unfortunately, people do this by default, but the ways they do it are drinking on the weekends, recreational drug use, partying, and that is not the sustainable way to accomplish it. They're doing it. They don't know they're doing it, but that's what they're doing. They're just coping. They're coping in ways that are not going to be sustainable and obviously are probably going to cause some other issues.
Right. I agree.
So
I would say like all of that's the most common thing. I think that, again, that's also where we go back to like, why is your goal that? Like, if your happiness is alcohol, or I think I gave you the example of Molly the other day with one girl.
right.
Have you ever thought about that there's something else going on that maybe you're not paying attention to? Have you ever thought maybe there's some trauma that you're ignoring? Like, obviously we're not therapists. We're never going to try to do that. But have you ever thought maybe that was the issue? Or if you're having this burnout and you are now coming to your 4th coach, I suddenly doubt that all 4 coaches were absolutely wrong and some were a little bit right. Have you ever thought about there's some shit that maybe you're not doing in the first place? Have you ever thought about that maybe this entire time you were not mentally ready to do any protocol or do anything like that? Have you ever thought about that this whole time you just thought so negatively that no matter what anyone does, it's not going to work because you have such a negative connotation to everything? It could be, oh, this person's going to make me train. This person's going to make me take XYZ supplement. This person's going to make me drink this, that. Cool. What is it that you like to do then? Let's go totally out of the box. You don't like to work out. What do you like to do? Oh, I like to go rucking. Cool. I want you to ruck 3 times a week. Awesome. You don't like chicken? Cool. What other foods do you like? Oh, I don't like anything. Cool. Take up a cooking class. Let's try out some different stuff. Like, there's got to be times where these people, like, where you've got to be like, cool, I'm going to better myself as a person and core life skills. It can't constantly be like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to do this because this is a punishment and I just want to reach this goal. Cool. If you want to reach that goal, you've got to figure out what are you doing that's holding you back, because it's not a plan. I don't think it's a plan. You and I could give the same plan to the same person, and they might both the person might still fail, and it goes back to them as well. So like, I do think like the trying out stuff, I'm big on telling everybody to find hobbies. You've got to find something that you enjoy. Like, doesn't matter what it is. You've got to do something that's enjoyable. And no, working out and doing cardio is not enjoyable. That's not what we're talking about.
Right. We're not
like
adding. We're not just going to add more of the stuff that's causing the problem. Right?
Find something that you enjoy. Like, me and Val went to a wrestling event in Detroit over the weekend. Did I want to spend the money? No, but I really felt that I deserved a good time from busting my ass the last 8 months since I went full time. And I felt I really needed to do something that I could enjoy my life, because I was getting burnt out doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Like, so maybe that was an example there. Find something you enjoy. With maybe us as coaches, where we can do a little bit better is maybe if it's a GI protocol, maybe instead of throwing them on 100 things and trying to get it done in 8 to 12 weeks, maybe we say, hey, let's do this first. Let's work on this. Let's maybe extend this over a longer period of time. Let's maybe understand and allocate that they're going to F up, and we will still work through it.
Right.
Maybe that's some things that maybe we could do better, while they have the same, we explain like the expectations from that. Cool, we could go very aggressive, be done in 12 to 20 weeks or whatever, or we can go a lot gentler. You can still kind of, we can find some ways you can enjoy life. Maybe, cool, you enjoy ice cream, awesome. Go get a Ninja Creamy and let's learn how to make some healthier ice cream, and you still enjoy it. Now you're still getting your enjoyable things while we keep working through it. Oh, you like to go out to eat with your spouse? Awesome. Almost everywhere you eat, you can get something that's pretty healthy and still good to enjoy those social times. Right. Oh, you like drinking and partying? Cool. We can find ways you can still do that and be smart. Like, this way it's like a happy balance between the two of us.
Right. Yeah, you have to, so essentially, it's like essentially what we're doing is all these people, including us, I mean, everyone has them. Everyone has coping mechanisms when they get burnout, or they feel, or they need to boost those dopamine levels and kind of bring some of that happiness in. We all have things that we do, right? So what we have to look at, and what maybe the person needs to look at and come to terms with, is maybe we need to take some of those coping mechanisms and trade them for something else that is going to be better for us, more sustainable, and kind of work us toward our goal. It's like I said, with the alcohol and the drugs and things like that, it doesn't have to be something like that. It could be like, even one that I see is someone comes in and they do have a lot of anxiety and things like that, and they're doing, all of the parasympathetic activities. They're journaling and meditating and walking and grounding and doing all these things. And so I'm looking at that and thinking, you need an awful lot of coping mechanisms to deal with this one thing. So maybe you don't know why that's happening in the first place, and you're just like accumulating all of these modalities, I guess, if you will, to cope with it. So maybe just understanding why it's there. Maybe you need some therapy. Maybe you need to re-explore some trauma. Maybe there's a reason that, honestly, maybe it's your environment, man. Like, we talked about this on the live I did yesterday about relationships. You and I talked about this on our call today. Maybe it's the people you're around. Um, maybe it's your partner, maybe it's your family or your friends, and the environment is facilitating this stuff. It's like one of the examples we used yesterday was when people do want to quote unquote get healthier and they go through any type of protocol or even just want to get into bodybuilding or whatever, all the people that they were hanging out with, all that they were doing is getting through, barely skating through the Monday through Friday so they could do all of the deleterious things on the weekend,
Mhm.
right? Maybe those people just aren't, maybe you need to have a conversation with them perhaps, or they're just not serving you at all anymore and they don't really support your well-being anymore, and you've outgrown some of these relationships. We had a really good chat about this yesterday. If any of you guys want to see it, it's the live I posted yesterday. But sometimes that is something you have to explore. It's just your environment is holding you back. I've seen it tons of times where somebody gets away from those relationships and those people, and then all of a sudden everything starts
Right.
working again. That
Yeah, it can be
job,
that. It
hey,
can be that. It can be job. Like I mean, with me at Rogue, I was miserable as hell, and decided to leave and do this full time with not even sure if this was gonna work out. And it worked out. I didn't do anything different. I don't post all the time on social media. The only thing I can say is now I can put time into it and I can actually have the mental energy for my clients and be a little bit more positive and that type of stuff. It wasn't like I turned into a better coach or whatever. It's the toxic ass place I was working at was dragging me down and was causing me to be in a terrible mood at all times. That now it's very different. It could be anything. I tell everybody, like, I told you, like, I'm in therapy multiple times a week. I think that's a very beneficial thing that everybody's afraid of. It's not a bad thing. Maybe it's some need to dive into spiritual work, whatever that can mean. It can mean you believe in God, or you can mean you believe in Joe Bob down the street. It doesn't matter, but maybe you could dive deeper into that. Like, there's so many different avenues that we could go to find happiness or de-stress that I think a lot of people need to dive into. And with those people that do a million things for parasympathetic activity, you can't tell me that doesn't stress you out. Because when I hear
right,
some of these people say, hey, I've got to journal in the morning, I've got to do my gratitude journal at night, I've got to write a letter to myself about my trauma and burn it in a fire, then I've got to go ground, and then I've got to walk onto burning glass and take a cold shower and do the most random stuff and put my ass in the air to the sun. Like,
right,
you can't tell me that you enjoy that, because that's stressing me out just thinking about that.
right.
Um,
These I call it the Andrew Huberman effect.
yes,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
big green for that.
granted, he's a really smart
Yeah.
guy and has a lot of great information. But I'm sure if you actually had a conversation, and I could be wrong, but I would assume that if you had a conversation with the guy, that he'd probably tell you the same thing, that you probably shouldn't be adding all of these things to your plate and causing more harm than
it's
good.
it's it's just tools in the toolbox. It's like with anything. Like, we could throw 100 supplements at you, or we could throw 3 or 4 good ones that would actually benefit you. Not that all of them would benefit you, but again, that's going to create burnout. If you need more parasympathetic stuff or stuff for happiness or whatever to chill out, cool. Let's trial one at a time and see what helps you. Maybe we find it. But if we throw all of them at you and you just hate it because you're like, wow, I've got to set aside all this time to do this, it doesn't matter what you do. We're still creating burnout. So, like, I think another thing is just maybe not always diving headfirst in everything. Maybe actually see what's working, what's not working.
Yeah,
Actually learn your body. Allow us coaches to learn what is working, what is not working.
yeah,
Just because you
yeah,
work with someone doesn't mean you need the most extensive plan known to man. It literally, for some, it might be a guy I talked to today before me and you talked earlier, told him it could be as simple as, hey, I want you to have protein a few times a day and drink this amount of water, maybe fruit a couple times a day and veggies. I don't want you to weigh anything out. Just eat that first. Whatever you want the rest of the meal, eat it. I don't care what it is. Let's do these healthy foundations. And he looked at me like I had 3 eyes. Like, no, the reason is because you're going to get burnt out before you even start. If I throw everything at you, this is again where you and I talk about all the time, meeting the person where they're at. The girl that talked to me that inquired a week or so ago, Told her the same thing. Cool, you've worked with these coaches, you're still not better. Awesome. I'm not putting you on a protocol. This is what I would recommend. We address a few things. First of all, I have to at least buy your trust. Me sending you some plan, no matter how good it is, isn't going to make you buy trust. Instead, maybe let's add in a couple things that maybe wasn't addressed properly in the past. Let's get you feeling a little bit better, get you looking like some progress is going. Let's buy that trust. Let's get to know one another. Let's get good communication going, where this is actually like a true business relationship versus just you're another client. Let's build that coach-client relationship, and maybe that's how we prevent burnout. That might be another example of what we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many things. There's so many things you can explore there, but really what it all boils down to is whether it's you or the coach you work with or your therapist or your husband or your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, you have to have an outlet that will be honest with you and help you build awareness around these things, because it's really difficult for us to not be biased. We are we're humans. I mean, we're probably going to kind of mask things as much as we possibly can until we simply can't do it anymore. And if we cannot at some point be honest with ourselves as to why we are doing the things we're doing, why we're creating these goals, why we're spinning our wheels, why we're doing all this stuff, then we're going to have a hard time. We're going to have a hard time figuring out, how to really sustain anything. I've seen it, and it's not just general population people that have never worked out before. It can be the most hardcore bodybuilder you've ever met that will, eat off the sidewalk. Like, that person can also be highly susceptible to burnout and essentially shorten their competitive career or shorten their lifespan of results, essentially. So everyone is susceptible, no matter who you are. It's a real problem, and we've all experienced it. And like I said today with the whole working out thing is kind of figuring out, like, what is burnout? When are you actually burnout? When are you just being a baby about stuff? When do you just need to own up and do some difficult tasks? Why are you avoiding certain things? Like, why do you have these avoidance behaviors? So there's learning those things. Coaches can absolutely help us with it. Coaches aren't going to be able to solve all your problems. You really have to look deeper, take inventory,
Yeah, I mean, and if it's a matter of not wanting to do it, cool. Remember, you signed up for this. Nobody else signed you up for it. Nobody picked your goal. You have the choice to quit at any time, whether it's a gut protocol and you sign up with one of us or someone else to do it. You get through it. You're like, hey, I'm tired of taking all these supplements and not being able to eat. Cool. You can quit whenever you want. That's fine. Just understand you might run into the same issue. You might not be better. Are you not wanting to suck it up for a few months and make it through there and us figure out strategies we can manage this? Or do you just want to keep being miserable the next 20 years? That's your call. To me, I'm going to suck it up a few months and make it through there. If you're a bodybuilder, cool. You're tired. You don't want to do your cardio. Cool. You got two decisions. Quit, don't do the show. Do it, do well. Or don't do it, still do the show and get last call out, and then you really look like a jackass and everybody's going to say something. Cool, you've got that decision. No one is ever holding a gun to you saying you have to do it. If Austin and I say, hey, to get better, you need to do this, we can say that. Again, you're a free, that's why there's such thing as free will. No one is controlling you in your mind or your body to make you do it. You have the choice at any time to choose to tell us to F off or tell us you're not going to do it. And we either figure out a plan, or maybe we say, hey, this won't work. This may be ethically, we know that this what needs to be done to protect your health and your longevity, and maybe we agree to disagree and wish you best of luck. And then if you ever need anything, reach back out. Like, there are times that might have to happen. And there might be times if you're in a gut protocol, cool. Maybe you go to a social event and you just have to say hi and bye to everyone and not eat a bunch of bullshit or drink a bunch of crap. Cool. That's the beauty of social events. Social events are meant to spend time with people you care and love, not to eat and drink. Learn the definition of what the social events are. That's like another thing. Like there's so much stuff to this that some people, we can avoid this protocol, this burnout so many times, because I feel like a lot of times if this was nailed right the first time, we wouldn't run into the burnout in general, whether it's a functional or whatever. All it would take is some proper communication or understanding that, hey, you're probably not burnt out. You just don't want to do what's necessity for your goal, which is okay. Like, it's okay if you don't want to do that. Let's reanalyze it and come with a new goal. There's a guy on here, I'm pretty sure, Tyler, he's a client of mine. He had the goal to want to compete. Early on, I figured out he was not going to be able to do that mentally. He was not in a good place mentally to do that. And we both got on the phone and we agreed that, hey, we need to find a new goal. You can be a bodybuilder and lose body fat and put on muscle, but let's not use the goal to want to turn pro and compete. I don't think you're mentally ready for that. I don't think that your life is in a good place for that. And cool, no one was dropped, no one quit. We just figured out a new plan, a new goal for you, and we figure out from there. And you kind of put that goal that you had maybe to the side. And if maybe it's a GI issue, you can maybe be like, cool, maybe you're not ready for in-depth CBET protocol. Cool, maybe we just give you a few supplements to manage symptoms so you at least feel better. And maybe we avoid a few things. And then when you start getting in a better place in your mindset and in life, and maybe you address some of that trauma, cool, maybe we jump to the plan that you originally wanted to fix and we go from there. Like, there's so many different ways we can avoid this. It's just got to be open. It's an open-ended conversation at all times between both parties. Either you have a client who's dead set on this, and it's either my way or the highway, or you have a coach that's dead set on, hey, you need to do this protocol, or you need to do this cardio for your goal. Cool, maybe we come together and we say, hey, this isn't working. I don't think it's going to work. What can we do to re-engineer the plan? And that, again, goes to the communication part. And I think that communication might be the biggest way to avoid the burnout in the first place.
Yep, absolutely. Well, this is a really good conversation. I think we have a lot of good takeaways here, so I hope everyone enjoyed it. I'll repost it and I'll tag you and stuff. So if anyone that jumped in late, I would definitely encourage you to rewatch it. We covered quite a bit here. So thank you, everybody, and we will talk to you all next time.
Cool, man. I'll see you.
Thanks, brother.
See you, buddy.